Hello, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a tutorial video where I'm going to show you step by step on how to integrate Clerk, which is basically a whole full stack auth and user management system for you. So you don't have to do the forgot password, change password, log in, log out. It has email verification through code and a whole bunch of other stuff. Very, very popular in React Next world. Wanted to see if I could get it working with Vue.js and Capacitor. The basic goal here is to use Clerk as your authentication provider on a mobile app wrapped with Capacitor. And in this example, specifically, I'm using Vue. First, let's do a quick demo of the app, and then we'll kind of walk you through how to get set up in preparation for me kind of going through step by step through all the changes that I need to make to a default application to integrate Clerk into it for login. If you like this type of stuff, make sure you like and subscribe and come back around for more. Okay, so here is what the final app is that we're attempting to build. I am using Clerk headless, which basically means I'm not using the Clerk components. This is a custom UI that I built for my sign-in screen, custom UI that I built for my sign-up screen. So Clerk does provide components that can kind of manage all that for you. I just wanted to show how to do it when you wanted to create it yourself. So let's go back to, let's start with create account. So enter my email. And then create account. See, it's going to run this CAPTCHA here for you. This was all handled by Clerk. Verify that I'm human. It's going to create my account. And you can see here, it sent an email for me to get a verification code. Me to enter down here. So let me just check my email and enter that. And then verify code. Now I'm verified successfully and I am logged in. You can see it as my user, email, user ID when I logged in. And then I just added some other calls that you get from the Clerk Vue library, so you can see how you can call Clerk directly to get things. So this gets all the user profile information that Clerk has saved, gets the session information. Then also you can make a call to actually refresh the session if you want to. We won't sign out, but let's try and close this app and kind of show how it kind of saves the state and logs me back in. Let's close all these other apps I got going on. We'll close the Clerk Ionic app, and then what the behavior we want to see is that when I open it up, it logs me back in. So it initializes authentication, it finds the session information, and loads the user in. That's the behavior that we want to see. And then let's do the last part. Let's kind of sign out, and then log back in. And now we're signed back in. So that's the app. That's what we're going to build. Like I said, it's just a template for you to take and you use to understand how to integrate Clerk into your app and potentially for you to integrate it into your existing app or use it as a starting point for a new app. And so talking about starting points, let's kind of transition to how we're going to get this project done and what the flow of this video is going to be. So like I said, we're going to build this app. We're integrating Capacitor or integrating Clerk. But what I did to kind of make this project a little bit easier to get started, I have a starting project that you can download to get you going. And what it is a basic Vue app. It has a mock authentication in there. It's meant to just be a starting point so that I don't have to spend a lot of time during the video building basic screens and setting up the basic Vue application. This application was set up using Ionic, so I am using Ionic components for the UI just for simplicity, but you could use anything else. If you see my other videos, I've used Tailwind, I've used Daisy, I've used a whole bunch of other things. It also already has iOS and Android integrated in it, so you can run it as a capacitor app and deploy directly onto your device. All right, so that is what we have here. And for folks who want to follow along with the code, I suggest you pause the video, check out this repo and download it so that you're set. The next step after that is to get Clerk set up, because we're going to need Clerk for integration. Go to Clerk. You're obviously going to log in, and what you'll do is you will set up a project. I already have a project set up, an application. This is the application I'm using. There's a few key things you have to remember to set up in your application. I'm going to cover those in the video. Plenty of videos on how to set up Clerk, but I'm going to show you how you need to configure it to work with this application. This is the application that we're using, and what you want to do is, because Clerk is configurable on what information you can take when you sign up a user, and if you recognize from our application, we took a first name and a last name. Let me log out. We have a first name and a last name, so those are extra fields that we need to account for inside a Clerk. So what you do is you go into, let's see, configure, user model, and make sure you check first and last name. The other thing that you want to do is make sure you have sign up with email turned on. You want to verify at sign up, and you want to do email code for verification. And then also you just can sign in with the verification email code. I don't think I've implemented that flow, but you might want to check it to make sure you have it turned on. For those of you who are wondering, why don't I check email verification link? Well, for one, it's a challenge to get the email verification link to work correctly on a mobile device. That's the most important thing. There's some external browser dependencies, and it's a much more complex flow on mobile devices. And I think that most users are much more comfortable with email verification code. Actually, what's interesting, if you turn this off and you click email verification link, Clerk actually pops this up and warns you that you should consider using email codes instead of links because of the poor conversion rates. So these are the important steps. Let me check my notes and verify that. These are the important steps that you need to do. The last thing is that you're going to need to get your API keys here. I'm not going to click on that, because if I click on it, then you'll see my API keys. But the important thing that you're going to want to pull out of there will be the publishable key that you need to get from the Clerk configuration, because we're going to need to set an environment variable in our test application. Back in here, there's no, that's another thing I missed. I need to make sure I add it. As an example, env, so you kind of know how you want to set that environment variable up. No, but when we start to add to the project, I'll show you where the values need to go. So we're done talking about setup. Make sure you have your Clerk project set up. Make sure you have made the changes that I mentioned here with having these verify flags set, email verification code. Make sure you update your user model to include the first name and last name. And then the final thing, like I said, is to make sure you go to your API keys and pull out your publishable key. So that's it for setup. Next, we're going to move on to actually starting to modify this project to add the functionality for Clerk authentication. So let's get to that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is install Clerk. So we have npm install Clerk Vue. And looks like I already had it installed previously, so now we have Clerk installed. Of course, you need to go in, I'm not going to show you, but inside your environment file, you need to set your public publishable key that you got from the Clerk console. And then after you do that, the first place we're going to start obviously is in main.ts. Looks like the template already has the Clerk plugin imported in here for you, and it has the publishable key that you need to import. So that's all set. And then down here, you need to import the plugin and say use Clerk plugin and sign the publishable key. Those are the only changes that are required to kind of get Clerk set up for you initially. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we have our own composable that it's going to be like the main entry point for accessing Clerk. And sign in, sign out, sign up. Anything that's related to signing in for user, we're going to manage it inside of this use auth composable. Right now, it's currently stubbed out with just these simple functions, and we're going to update each one of them in a specific order so that we can demonstrate some other things. Since the create your account flow is a little bit more complex because you have to take a verification code and this other stuff, we're going to just start with basic sign in and sign out. We'll verify that we can sign in an existing user that I already showed exists inside of my Clerk account. If you don't have an existing user yet, what you can do is you can go into your Clerk console, create a user so that you have something to kind of test the sign in with first. Because we're going to use that to make sure we have Clerk imported and the basic stuff around Clerk functioning properly. So what I'm going to do just to make my life easier, I'm just going to delete everything that's inside of sign in, since that's where we're going to start, and we're going to kind of replace it with some new code. So first, let's make sure we have our Clerk imports that we need. And so we have this Clerk, use Clerk, which will get us a Clerk client, and use user, which will get us information about the current user. We're going to add some toasts and leverage Ionic toast controller to give you some visual cues when state changes happen inside the application. And then what we want to do is right here inside of use auth, we're going to leverage our Clerk component library and our used user to get some state information, whether the user signed it or not, the user object, and whether Clerk has been loaded appropriately. So that's what we're doing with those variables. We are going to do some error management, so we need to be able to keep track of some errors. So let's create some variables to kind of hold those. And also they're going to be at the top level here. Now we're set up, so let's get into our basic sign-in function. One of the first things we know we're going to want to do is set up the initial state. We're going to want to wrap this with a try catch. Copilot type ahead tries to fill out stuff for us. I'll let it fill out stuff just to keep it easy, and then I'll circle back around and clean it up. So on any errors, we definitely want to return false. So let's set that to return false. If we get here, we definitely want to return true. So we'll set that here. And then here's the first time that we're actually gonna use a Clerk call. Clerk value is possibly null, so we got to put a null check in there to make sure it's null. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our email, pass it in as an identifier. We're going to take our password, and we're going to call our Clerk client and attempt to sign in. And we're going to get a result back. Then we need to handle some conditions based on a result that we get back. Result is possibly undefined. So if I have a result and the status is complete, once again, this Clerk value can be undefined. This is the catch that we want to make sure we do, because since we're using headless, Clerk can't sync its state by itself. So what we need to do is after we're signed in, we need to sync the active state with the session ID we just got back with Clerk. So this is really, really important step right here to make sure that you do. Otherwise, set the error value to sign in failed, sign in failed, and we return false. If some other error happens that wasn't specifically from sign in, it looks like we're not integrating Toast yet. We're going to save that till kind of the end of the show so that we're not doing too much at once. So let's just replace this and just kind of dump out console logs for any errors. So this is our basic sign-in function. It's set up, pretty straightforward. Clerk, pass any information, does the login, returns the status complete or not, and then moves on. So pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Got some errors down here at the bottom. Let's do sign out, because after we sign in, we can make sure we can potentially sign the user out. So let's kind of rip all this stuff out. Let's set the is loading value again. Let's set our try. Do the simple Clerk value is sign out. I don't know if we really care too much about errors here. Let's just be thorough and catch. So it will attempt to sign out. It will return true. It will follow this return false. Why is this complaining? Oh, this is promise void. Let's change this to Boolean. See if that keeps everybody happy. And on error, we don't need this. Not getting that advanced yet. Okay, so we have sign out done. And we're going to stop there because, like I said, sign up's a little bit more complex, so we'll worry about that later. Let's just check if our basic sign in and sign out works. So let's come over here and refresh this. Refresh my server, and remember the user I showed you from earlier, I believe was Aaron K. Saunders at gmail.com. And sign in is not a function, so let's take a look at our login page. Handle sign in. Oh yeah, let's clean this up. So we're using our use auth hook. Composable, it has a sign in function that gets passed through, turns it true or false. And so for our sign in, we check our fields, we set our is loading, we make our call. If there's no errors, well, it catches an error here, but I probably need to check this and then only navigate to profile if result is true. Let's take this and move it out of there. Now push to profile, else error value, still clear email and password, and error value error. Are we displaying the error value anywhere? Looks like we are, so that's correct. So let's see if we get something different. Sign in. So we're getting our error displayed. All right, now let's try again. The profile page worked as it should. I signed in my existing user. I got my user ID. I got my email addresses. This Auth action page looks like it's not connected yet because it's error saying authentication will be enhanced with Clerk integration. So what we want to do is we want to kind of add the additional functions to get, but there's an ability to get the user profile, ability to get the session information, ability to refresh the session. So let's see where that will be in the profile view here. And the template's already in place. Looks like we're not even using handle sign out anymore. We need to go to auth actions components. Let's go up there. All right, so we need to add buttons. And it looks like it's dumping the results into this paragraph tag based on specific actions. So let's kind of implement some of them to see what we get. All right, so let's start with the get user profile. Let's update the button. So let's add our function to kind of handle get user profile. Looks like first we need to check some status here because we need to want to know if the user's signed in or not, because if they're not, we probably don't even want to be here. But let's import some functions that we're going to need from our useAuth composable. And let's import our useAuth. All right. Import the ref because we're using that. Let's import useAuth. Is signed in is being used up here already, so that's why we're fine. And so let's write our first function, const handle get user profile. User is not signed in, because you shouldn't be able to do this if you don't have this information. Unless I'm not returning it from my useAuth yet. So let's go down here, const handle get user profile, and we're not going to do all that. So if there's no user value, sorry, only if there is a user value, but we need to actually return this thing. And so we'll return user value, else user is not signed in, return null, and then let's get down here and look at user profile, go back to auth actions, sorry, not handle, get user profile. So let's go back here. And then now go here. Let's comment these out until we actually use them and see if this, what happens now. So looks like my get user profile is not implemented correctly. Auth actions, get user profile, action result, value, take the profile. I'm going to JSON stringer find the profile and return its value. Action result, action result. Am I not rendering action result? I am not rendering action result. Therein lies my problem. So let's render action result. If I have an action result, we'll render it. So now I have an action result, and you can see it's rendered here, but I need it to be prettier. So can I just do this? C-R-E, and it looks prettier. And you can see that we have the user profile. All right, since we're here, let's kind of round out the rest of these, get session info and then refresh session. So they should be very similar to what was done above. And I suspect that we will get our type ahead to kind of help us with this. So const handle get session. We're going to kind of take the same approach here. We're going to say get session. So same kind of flow, but now we need to go update our button first off. So I really just need these two lines. And this changes to handle get session info. That changes to disable the sign in. That gets deleted. And let's make sure I have my function called handle get session info. Now we just need to add our get session function. So we're going to go back up to here. And we're going to say get session. And then we're going to go to our auth. And then we're going to say get session. We're not going to do it there. Session. And then get session info. And we'll go up here and just let it do its thing. Except it seems like there isn't a get session call. Okay. Move in. And we get our session info. It was giving us a lot of stuff. And then the last one is refresh session. And let's just start backwards. Let's add it here first. Const. Let's follow name, handle, refresh session. Looks like the type ahead got it wrong. And then we'll go down here and refresh session, handle refresh session. Why am I getting an error? Handle refresh because I'm missing close. So we have our handle refresh session. Now let's go back to our auth actions. Let's update our button again. So first we know we need this disabled sign in. So we're going to do it here. Disabled sign in. Move that. Let's handle refresh session. Let's go down here and put our function in. And refresh session follows the same pattern. Didn't add my call. Refresh session. There we go. So we have our info. Session refreshed. Everybody's happy. So this page is doing everything it's supposed to do. You can sign out. You can log back in. I've logged back in, get my user's profile, get my session information, refresh my session. Everything works as it's supposed to work. that is all fine and dandy, that everything is running here in the web, but remember our whole idea was to get this working on mobile, so let's close this and see what we got. So as I stated, this template package was already set up with iOS and Android. I'll include the instructions on how to set that up in the template if it's not already there, but let's just do an npm run build to make sure there's no TypeScript errors or anything, and it builds successfully. So it looks like it's interesting. Sign up is complaining we haven't done the sign up yet. So let's see, will this make it fix it? All right, let's try and run a build again. Okay, so that is all set. And then now to run on a device, we can say ionic cap run iOS. We pick our device. I think I'm running on a Pro Max as my device. It will build. All right, so the app launched. Let's see if we can log in. All right, and so we're able to log in. We're logged in on device. We get our user information, we get our session information, and can refresh our sessions and can sign out. So I think that that's a pretty good first step. And then, like I said, this next part here about setting up an account, because you need to create the account. Then after the account's created, you get sent the email. You need to update the UI for you to enter a code. And then you need to verify the code, and then you'll be signed in. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay. We just tested and validated everything worked fine on the device. So now let's get back to finishing up the sign up view because it's complex multiple steps. So let's run our app server again. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to make the changes for the screen to handle the verify flow based on the way that Clerk handles it. So let's go to, we'll just go to our sign up view. Let's get things straight here for a minute. So we have our handle sign up. We have simple validation error here for the fields. We're not doing anything complex. Password match. We have the initial sign up call, which is coming from our use auth, but there's a series of changes in state that needs to be updated here so we know how to add above our error display. We need another component after you create the account and we're in the state where you need the code. We need a component to appear for you to enter the code. So let's work on that. And what we're going to do is we're going to just save something to local storage, which indicates which state the application is in. So let's start first by, what are we going to do? Checking to see what the response is we get from here. So I'll say const if result, then we're good. Else, here's where we need to check the result that came back to see if it matches any state that indicates we need to verify. So if we get an error, back that includes a verification or email verification is required, then we're going to set this needs verification value, and then we're also going to set our local storage. It looks like we need to add this needs verification variable to our form state up here. So this will set the default value when the page loads if needs verification is set. And then what we'll do is down here, if the result is we set our error value to, we basically clear it out. But then it's probably, let's just create a function called clear form because we're doing it in a bunch of different places. And so we can just call clear form here. And then we can also call it here. And then we'll also wipe the needs verification, and then we'll set the needs verification to false if everything was good. And then we can remove the clear form from here. We can move the navigation up to here, because we only want to navigate to profile if everything was good. Otherwise, we want to set this flag. And then now the final part is that if the flag is set, we're going to update our UI to kind of show an input for the codes. So let's see, where's a good place to put that? Confirm password, padding, button. Let's do it right above the error display. So let me save this. Well, certain why I'm getting this. Oh, I forgot my bang in the front for the error. Okay, so if our needs verification, which is a value that's set either from returning from the function or we've loaded it from local storage, then we're going to render this field for the verification code to be entered. That's the code that will be sent to your email, and we'll capture it in our verification code field. And then this click handle verify will actually make the API call back to Clerk with the code to check to see if the code matches. And if it does match, it'll change state and the UI will update. And this is just some loading stuff to make sure that the spinner changes. And then once a user is verified, we will get a check mark done on the verify account. That you'll only see that briefly before the page navigates onto the profile. So let's add this missing verification code in our handle verify function. And let's create our verification code function up top here. And then let's go down and look at our logic that we have. We're not going to simulate the verification. We're actually going to make an API call to set the verification. And we're going to need to add that inside of back to our use auth. Well, first let's change this because it should be coming from our composable, our use auth, our sign up. And then we have our handle verification. And then now let's go to use auth. And then down here, once again, it kind of got ahead of itself, but this is basically the flow. If I have an is signed in value, we're assuming that there is a pending email address verification. We're going to make the appropriate API call to verify. Okay, once again, we have to have our basics. So we want to set our is loading to true. We want to set our error value to blank. We're not going to display. We're going to do a sign up attempt because one should exist if the user really is in a state for a handle verification. Let me get that. So we're going to check to see if we have a sign up attempt. If there's no sign up attempt, we have an error. That shouldn't happen because that means we're in a bad state. And then what we do once we're down here, if we have a sign up attempt, we basically take the sign up attempt. This once again must be Copilot throwing in old versions of the code. But here we're going to take our sign up attempt, and on sign up attempt there's a function attempt email address verification, and all we need to pass in is the code, and then we'll get status back, and we'll get a status of complete. That means the email was successfully verified, otherwise there was an error. And that should be it for our handle verification. So let's just return it. Go back to our sign up view and complete this handle verification. And then that will be the call that is handled. It's called handle verify. Let's just change that here. Handle verify. I have another function where I'm wrapping it. So let's go down to our handle verify. We're going to remove this, and we have our handle verification. We pass in the code. If there's a result, we set it to false. We remove the item. We set our local storage to false. This should make the verified code UI disappear. We clear our form and we move on to the profile page. Otherwise, we set the error value and we keep it moving. So I think that is the basic flow. Let's see what we got. So let's try to create a user. All right, what happened? Because my state didn't change. So let's open up the error log and see. Well, did we get any errors here? No errors here. Let's check our error log. Oh, we got a bunch of errors here. Let's refresh this. And let's try this with our error log open. Interesting. So it made the call. I got no email, no state change. So it looks like something is not right in my code. And it thinks it worked because the state switched from the create account. So let's take a look at the code and see if there's something we missed, or maybe we need to add some additional logging. So handle sign up, error value is loading, await sign up. Otherwise, it's just staying here. So we're falling into this loop here. So let's see what we're getting back. Oh, well, let's check. My hunch is that the error value is not being set appropriately, but let's just go through it and see what we get. Okay, so we dropped in result is false, which is what we expected it to be. Error. So that is exactly what I suspected is happening. There is no value set on our error when we come back. So let's go back to our use auth and our sign in, or sign up. Oh, I didn't add the code for sign up. My mistake. So let's remove this and let's fill in some real code in here. Let's slow down Copilot a bit and just put in the basics that we know we're going to need. And then here's where we're going to put our code. The sign up is very similar to the sign in, where you kind of pass the values that you want and then you get a response. Except what's going to happen is we're going to come back with some result statuses to test if it's complete or not, so we can appropriately pass the error value so that it knows whether or not it needs to display the verification email. So we're just going to get the basic going here first. So we're going to make our sign up call here, where we're going to create our user. Then we're going to check our result. If our result's complete, then we're just going to set to active and keep it moving. Although we know that this isn't going to happen because we have verification as a requirement on our sign up. So we need to handle that situation. So the other status we're going to check for here, if we were missing some information that we needed, it's not this, it is missing requirements. And if they're missing requirements, we can't get this far because we're already checking to make sure all the fields are valid. But what we're going to do here is if we're missing requirements, it's the verification. And so we will prepare the email for verification using the email code. Clerk is smart enough to know what the email is already, so we don't need to pass that in. We just need it to prepare for the address verification. that should send the email to me. And that email should have the code inside it that I need. We will set the error to email verification so that the front end will find the verification requirement and show the box on the bottom for us. Else, sign up failed, we return. Otherwise, we move out, but then we definitely make sure that our loading is set to false. All right, so this looks like it's closer to where we want it to be. So let's let this rip and let's give this another try. Aaron 20, Aaron 20, Saunders. So we hit our debugger. Let's see what our error is now. Why is my error still blank? But I did get the email sent. I can't show it to you, but I did get an email sent. Looks like I'm not setting, let's see what's happening here. What happened? Oh, it's this CAPTCHA wizard thing again. I forgot to, that's a step I forgot. All right, so what that means is that Clerk is trying to verify the user with CAPTCHA. And so all we really need to do is just put a little tag at the top of our sign up page. So we'll put it here in our create account. So we'll put that right in here. So you add this for the CAPTCHA. So that was the error. You can see here, that's the error that's kind of throwing the whole page off. Okay, so now after we've set this CAPTCHA is how you say it, I guess. Let's restart everything, hard refresh. Let's take another look at our flow now to make sure that it's right. So where are we? Handle sign up. If I get a result, then clear the form. Needs verification is false, move on. Otherwise, if I get an error, then drop in here and handle it. All right, so first of all, let's make sure that I'm returning false on my sign up. If status is complete, then return it. If status isn't, all right, await this and return false. We want to confirm this result status, so let's do this. Let's console log sign up results so we can kind of see what we're getting. Maybe that'll kind of help us debug this. I like to go through this debugging process to kind of help you guys so that if you run into something similar, you kind of understand the flow. Well, it looks like it did get to the right place this time. Let's check our console. So let's see with the sign-in result, a lot of noise. See our status missing requirements, and we've resolved our CAPTCHA problem. So let's let this run and see where we go. We're still not seeing our UI change to support. So I hit my debugger. Let's just make a more thorough check. So we're just making a more thorough check of the error message. What also might be helpful right here, console, exactly what the error value is. So let's try now. That's interesting. I'm getting no value back in my error value. As you can see, we're logging the sign up, and my error value is not getting updated, and that should be, oh, I see the problem. There's two errors that I need to be tracking, because what's happening is that this, let me change this. This should be local error. Errors on my local page, and then the use auth is returning the error, which is the value that I've been trying to track and have not been looking at. How are we going to do? Since I can't assign an error like this, we need to change, this should be local error, and then we should be assigning, because I need to handle the scenario where I have an error locally where I assign it, and then also a scenario where the Clerk API or use auth composable is sending us back an error. So in these examples here, These are local errors. Those are local errors. Here, when we start anything, we're going to set our local error value. We're going to clear it. See, so now it's using the error that got sent back to us from our use auth composable. But then anytime I'm assigning a value, an error, I need to use local error. So we use local error again here. Hope this makes sense. Once again here, since we're setting this locally, it's our local error value. The local error value gets reset here. Local error value. And then our local error value. All right. That was a problem. So what was happening is here is I was looking at this error value, and it was really our local error value. So now we'll get the error that's getting passed back from the composable, and that should get us moving. So let's refresh all this and go again. You can see I added a more comprehensive set of errors. So I forgot, am I at plus 20? Yeah, at clearlyinnovative.com, Aaron 20, Saunders. All right, now we're here. Now let's check our error again. All right, so we have our error and it says email verification required, which will match this first one. So now we'll set our local storage for our code. Let's let this run. You see it's prompting for our verification code. I got an email. Let's enter my code. All right, did I connect the verified code buttons? See if we got any errors. We have some UI errors. I don't think these are, start complaining about this icon here in the beginning. We can resolve that, but that should not have. Let's do this. Let's get rid of this icon problem first. Checkmark done outline. I think I need to go back to main where I'm loading in all of my icons. Mark outline, checkmark. Checkmark done. And let me get these icons added appropriately so we can be error-free. Maybe it's not supposed to be checkmark done. It's probably what the problem is. Yeah, it's supposed to just be checkmark, my bad. I think that this is once again, come on. Okay, so that fixed that error. Now let's see if our same verification code will still work. I doubt it, but let's give it a try. Yeah, it didn't work. It says user's not signed in. So in my handle verification, if I have Clerk, then execute this stuff. Console log, Clerk not initialized. So that's why this was just exiting out. So let's see if I can still get it to go. I got to refresh my page to get the new code. So let's give this another go. Create account. Should hit our debugger. I'm going to let it go. I got my verification code. All right, so looks like it verified me, but I think we have some state issues again. Because you see email verified successfully, but as you can see, I did not properly reload the user, and so all these fields are blank. Let's see how we can fix that. Well, first, let's see if I refresh. Yeah, because you see when I refresh, it gets the proper user information. I have a couple of icon errors here, which I would like to resolve. It looks like this person icon is missing. Looks like it's just got the wrong name. So person outline, and that's the profile view. And that's on one of the buttons. Sorry, no, that's the auth actions component. And let's go up here. Outline, block outline. I think this should be person outline. All right, so we got the person icon there. Let's see if our warnings go away. All right, our warnings are all gone away. But we still need to see why it didn't load this in immediately. And I think it is because I think I need to do that clerk set active for the session, and I did not do it. Let's go in our use auth. I think inside of here, I want to set that. Actually, there's a couple of places I missed it. Because in our sign up, so I have it right here in our sign up, but I think I need it in our handle verification. And that should sync the session, which should give us the user information that we need. So let's try syncing this one more time. So let's sign out. Let's go back to this and put all this back in, but let's change this to 21. Get my new code. And that's what we wanted to see. Sync the user, we have all the information, get the profile, get session info, refresh the session, sign out. All right, so let's do a couple of the things here. Let's get rid of this debugger. Let's do this. I think on clear form, we should also reset this this verification flag, because it shouldn't be displayed if the form has been cleared out. Clear out that and clear out that. Let's just reset everything. But once again, since this whole thing is about deploying to device, let's kind of give that a go. So as we did earlier, we do an npm run build to check for TypeScript errors. Those got no TypeScript errors, and now we do an ionic cap run iOS, deploy it. And we're going to deploy to our 16 Pro Max. I believe that's what I have running. Yep. And let's start with first let's check our old ones, see if they log in. And they appear to log in fine. API calls work. Sign out works. All right, let's create a new account. So our Aaron plus 30. Create account. Get our CAPTCHA. Now you can see our UI updated for the verification code 042578. And now we're logged in. And APIs work. And let's sign out. Okay, for one of the most important things in a mobile application is maintaining the state. So after the user logs in and closes the app and comes back, if the session's still active, it should kind of rehydrate, for lack of a better word, all that user session information and bring the user back to the profile page. It should not just come back with blank screen and ask you to log in again, like it is doing here. So, for example, so you see what's happening is when I try to sign in, I'm getting this error message that the session already exists. I've been signed in. And this is happening because the application is not checking for a session before it renders this sign-in screen. The application should identify this Clerk session that exists, hydrate the user, like I said, and take you to the profile screen. So we need to add code to watch the authentication state and then move you to the right screen based on your current authentication status. So that's what we're going to do in this part of the video. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use suspense. We're going to use Vue suspense. For those familiar with the React, you understand what it is. It basically allows us to wait for an asynchronous action to complete, and then it'll render different UIs. And so how we're going to accomplish that is we're going to, in our use auth, we return this is loaded. Well, where's is loaded? Is loaded. Oh, that's about to be a problem. I guess we don't. This looks like it's being declared twice. So let's comment that out. The is loaded is what we want. This, as it says, it indicates the Clerk has completed the initialization to let you know that Clerk has loaded, and if there's a user, all the user information and everything will be loaded for you. So what we want to do is, let me see if I got this right. Go down and make sure we're returning the is loaded value. And so we'll return the is loaded value. And then what we want to do is inside of our, we're going to go back to app view, and we're going to move this into a separate component. So let's create this new component. First, let's modify our app view. Okay. So this is the new component I need to add, which is why it's complaining. But basically what's going to happen is with suspense, we're going to create this new component that will be asynchronous. And so until this is done loading, you'll see a loading spinner get rendered. Do I have my loading spinner? Yes, I do have my loading spinner. And until this is done, you'll see the loading spinner. And so what we're going to do inside of our app component, we're going to make it asynchronous. So let's go up here and create our app component. New file, app content. And it's really just everything that used to be in the app view, plus some asynchronous stuff, which I'll discuss. All this stuff, see, the primary part is we have our IAM router to show the content, but we have these two values we're getting back from our composable. We have our is signed in and is loaded. And so this is the promise. Wait for Clerk to be fully loaded before rendering. This makes the component async for suspense. This is what we want, this code right here. And it's basically watching this is loaded value to see if it changes. And then if it changes and loaded is true, then this watch stops, it's resolved, and once the promise is resolved, the component will then get rendered. Now what's happening down here on this watch is it's checking sign in and root. So every time you sign in or every time the route's changing, it executes this code. We've separated our routes. So this is a protected route, which you need to be authenticated to get access to. This is a guest route, or the routes you don't need to be authenticated to get access to. And so there's in these two arrays. And so what we do is we take the protected routes and we see if the current route that got passed in on this watch or that changed on the watch. And if I'm not signed in, then replace and send me to the login page. Down here, we check our guest routes. And if you're signed in, as it says here, don't redirect from sign up, because we could be trying to verify. But otherwise, if we have the verification state, this is where we're checking the verification state. You see the local storage that we saved before. Then we just return and we send a verification page. Otherwise, we just redirect to the profile because we found the user from our composable and the user signed in. So let's see if all of this stuff worked the way it's supposed to work. As you know, never really works the first time. So this should be working. Nope, let's see. Looks like it like that. Let's see what happens. So it doesn't think that it has a user here. Let's sign in. So this worked. So now let's hard refresh the page. It's loading, it found the authentication, and it brought us to the right page, as opposed to last time, it did not do that. So now that we verified that it's working on mobile, let's go back to where we want to be and make sure it's working on device. npm and ionic cap run iOS. Let's pick our device, our 16 Pro Max. Let's go back over and wait for this guy to reload. And you see how it automatically loaded because we had the user there? So that's the watcher working for us. So that's the last piece that I wanted to have. So now you know how to create a user, have the user get verified with an email code. You know how to log in, you know how to log out, you know how to get access to these additional API calls that Clerk provides you, and you also know how to reload a stored state of a user whenever you come back to the application. Those are the major chunks that I wanted to cover. So this is where the coding part ends. So we have the basic functionality implemented as we said we wanted to do in this video. Things got a little crazy in there. We had some challenges working with the type ahead from Copilot. We got stuck for a while with the CAPTCHA, and also just not updating code that we thought we updated. But I demonstrated how you can debug these problems and resolve your issues. Also, one other thing to note, there are a couple of other things that you can do. You can add some better error handling. You can clean up the UI, of course. I did not include forgot password, reset password. Those are additional things that you could add to make this a much more complete solution. There's a blog post associated with this. All the source code will be made available to you. Also, hopefully you found this video helpful. Once again, please make sure you like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.